They were waiting for him. Lena, with false embraces and 20 years of betrayal behind her. Ethan, a pathetic lover, smug in his sense of impunity. And he was coming home with honor, with medals, with scars from wars they never even tried to understand. The house, built by his parents' hands, was meant to be a safe harbor, but became a place of truth. One click, and everything crumbled. Secrets, lies, memories that once felt eternal. But instead of revenge, there was a plan. Cold, precise, and the kind of justice only a man forged in fire could deliver. When her mother heard the truth, and the children chose their father's side, it became clear. Everything had changed. He lost a wife, but found himself. And maybe, just maybe, something more. Real healing doesn't begin with forgiveness. It begins the moment you stop being a victim. Great to see you. Before we begin, please scroll down to the description and subscribe to my friend's channel. It means a lot to him. Thank you, and let's dive in. It began one unremarkable Friday evening, totally unplanned, and from that point forward, we were nearly inseparable. 9 months later, I got down on one knee and proposed. That was back in 1988, and truthfully, I've been coasting on luck ever since. Lena moved up to my place in northern Idaho, even though it added more than 23 miles to her daily drive. She was teaching in Spokane Valley across the state line, so it made for quite the commute. But not once did she gripe, not even a hint of resentment. We tossed around the possibility of moving closer to her school, but I just couldn't part with that house. It sat nestled on 5 wooded acres just off I-95, north of Coeur d'Alene. My folks had built it with their own hands, and after they were gone, they passed it down to me. Along with the house came the land and a solid inheritance. I always figured it would one day belong to our children. At the time, I was still in the reserves, just the standard 1 weekend a month and a couple of weeks training annually. Lena never once made an issue of it. Every modest paycheck from those duties went straight into my IRA. Not long after we tied the knot, about 18 months in, we welcomed our daughter, Rachel. Then came 1990. Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and my unit got mobilized. I ended up being away for a little over a year. When we came home, we were met with waving flags, loud cheers, and people treating us like returning champions. About a year later, our son Caleb was born. Then 9/11 happened, and everything shifted. I was given a path back into active duty, and I didn't hesitate to take it. From that point on, we bounced between Camp Pendleton in California and Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. Lena, ever flexible, earned her teaching credentials in both states and always managed to find work. I served 3 tours in Iraq and 3 more in Afghanistan, 6 years worth of deployments. Add to that 4 separate years stationed in Okinawa. Each time I shipped out, Lena packed up the kids and took them back to Idaho. Same house, same school district. She never voiced frustration, but I could see the toll in her eyes. I missed 10 of the kids' birthdays, 10 anniversaries, and more holidays than I'd care to count. That kind of distance leaves its mark. Right before my final deployment, I held her tight and made a promise. This would be the last one. She looked up at me, love and weariness in her gaze. "I've heard that before, Ramsey." "I mean it this time," I said. "I'm 56. I can't keep doing this forever." "Then make sure you come back to me," she said softly. "I will," I told her. "Some people look at my career and say, 'Over 30 years, and you're still just a gunny?' Fair enough. I didn't climb the ladder all that high. But rank was never my priority. I kept my nose clean, stayed faithful to my wife, and sure, I enjoyed a few drinks now and then. And if someone crossed the line with one of my Marines, I had no problem settling it with my fists. Semper Fi actually means something, I once told a captain after a bar fight. He dabbed the blood from his cheek and said, "Sure does. So does common sense." I probably missed a couple promotions because of moments like that, but I never whined. I liked being Adam Ramsey. I was the one people came to for straight answers, tactical insight, or just a good laugh when tensions were high. At my retirement party, the guys went all out. There was more beer than anyone needed, endless stories, and laughter that left you sore. Even Lieutenant Lucas Crawford dropped by. We'd had our battles. He once physically pulled me off a lieutenant during a shouting match. But over the years, mutual respect grew between us. "The Corps won't be the same without you, Adam," he said, as he handed over a commendation. "Thanks, Lucas," I replied, shaking his hand. "But the Corps will manage just fine." Then Daniel, this mountain of a kid from Georgia, came over with something wrapped in brown paper. "Got you a little something, Adamik," he said with a big grin. When I unwrapped it, I burst out laughing, a carved wooden hand flipping the bird in perfect detail. "You're serious?" I said, chuckling. "Dead serious," he said. "Figured it was your style." I turned it over and saw our unit patch and the Marine Corps emblem etched into the wood. "You made this yourself?" I asked. "Every bit of it," he said, puffing up with pride. "You did a hell of a job, Daniel," I told him. "This one's staying with me for good." We shook hands as the room filled with applause and cheers. Then I turned to Harrington, a dependable staff sergeant set to take over my machine gunner duties. "Look after the men, James," I said, squeezing his hand. "I will, Adam," he replied. "You've got my word." "Good," I said with a grin, "because if you screw it up, I'll come back and personally set you straight." The whole room roared. Captain Martin stepped in next. "Harrington's solid, Adam," he said. "But between you and me, no one's really going to fill your boots." "Thanks, sir," I said. "That means a lot." We shook hands, and soon after, a young Marine let me know my bags were ready, and the car was waiting to take me to the airport. As the plane started its descent, I snapped out of my thoughts. Out the window, Spokane came into view, the river winding through the city, the waterfalls churning, and the old Expo 74 pavilion shining in the sun. I smiled, remembering all the times I'd taken Lena and the kids there. The wheels touched down, and the cabin came alive as passengers began to rise. With my duffel slung over one shoulder and my sea bag on the other, I stepped toward the terminal doors. I scanned the crowd, hoping Lena would be there. Nothing. I grabbed my phone and quickly sent her a message. "Where are you, babe?" Still no answer. I gave her a call, but it went straight to voicemail. My stomach tightened. I tried the house next. Only the machine picked up, its mechanical voice barely audible over the background noise of the terminal. I whispered a silent plea, "Please let her be okay, God." Still no word from her, so I decided to try her parents. "We haven't heard anything either," her mother said, worry thick in her voice. "Do you want us to come get you?" I paused before answering. "Not yet. She could be caught in traffic or something. I'll stick around a while and see if I can catch a ride. No sense in you driving all the way down here if I end up heading right back to Athol. But if you do hear from her, please ask her to call me." "Of course, Adam," she said, then hung up. I stood there for a few moments, lost in a fog of concern and unanswered questions, when someone called out from behind me. "Hey, Adam, need a lift?" a voice asked. I turned to find a tall man in khakis hoisting a suitcase into the back of a white SUV. He had that unmistakable ex-military look, broad shoulders, upright posture. I walked over. "Was supposed to meet my wife, but she didn't show. Where are you heading?" "Just packed up," he said, brushing off his hands. "Driving to Idaho, right between Athol and Bayview near Highway 95. "No way," I said. "That's exactly where I'm headed. If the offer's real, I'd be grateful." "Of course," he nodded. "Beats waiting here or paying a fortune for a cab. Toss your bags in." "Thanks," I said, relieved. "At least let me give you something for gas." "No need," he replied, waving it off. "Company card covers the trip." I loaded my gear, climbed into the front seat, and fastened my belt as he started the engine. "You on leave?" he asked once we were rolling out of the parking lot. "Actually, I'm done," I said, smiling. 30 days of terminal leave and then that's it. I'm out for good. 30 years of service? He asked, visibly impressed. Jacob Steele, he added, offering a handshake. Adam Ramsey, I replied, shaking it. You flying in or just passing through? Came from Camp Lejeune, I said, stretching my legs. Just rotated home from Afghanistan. Bet you're running on fumes, he said. You don't even know, I muttered, pulling out my phone again. Got a ride. All good. TC's home. I sent the update to Lena. So, what's next? He asked as the road opened up ahead. Any big plans or just taking it easy? Nothing major, I said, shrugging. Planning to fish a little, maybe hunt. Chase my wife around the house if she lets me. He laughed. I get that. I retired after 25 years in the Army. Made lieutenant colonel. I'll tell you, retirement's not always the smooth ride people imagine. What are you into now? I asked, curious. I run a men's retreat up north in Idaho, he said, like it was no big deal. Seriously? I asked, surprised. I've lived in that area most of my life and never heard about it. When did it get started? Been about a decade, he said. We keep it off the radar on purpose. What kind of retreat? I asked, eyeing him with interest. It's for men facing hard times, emotional breakdowns, trauma, stuff like that, he explained. What kind of situations are we talking? I leaned back against the seat. You ever see a Marine get a Dear Jacob letter while deployed? Not personally, I said, my voice steady. Then you know how hard that hits, he said, looking out at the road. Yeah, I said, turning my gaze to the window. I know exactly how hard. We work with guys like that, mostly civilians, no training, no idea how to manage when their world falls apart. Some of them are afraid of the man in the mirror, he said. So, how do you help them? I asked. We start with the body, get them physically strong again. Then we move on to the mental and emotional. We even have legal support if they're in a bind, he said. That's a serious setup, I said, nodding. How long's the program? 90 days, it's tough, kind of like boot camp, but for men trying to rebuild their lives. Sounds intense, I said. You ever do time as a DI? He asked, a small grin forming. Yeah, Paris Island. Took a sergeant up to staff sergeant, I said. Then you get it, he said. Sometimes, breaking a man down is the only way to build him back stronger. Exactly, he said, offering another relaxed grin. I paused before answering. That's a place I've always wanted to visit. You might not have to wait long, he replied. We're looking to bring someone on as our next senior instructor, someone to take charge, hold things together, mentor the newcomers. The whole package. I ran a hand across my chin. Sounds like something I'd be good at. You're not wrong, he said with a pointed glance. Honestly, I doubt it's coincidence that we crossed paths today. You think this is fate or something? I asked. Sometimes I do, he said. So you're saying this was supposed to happen? Yeah, he said, no hesitation. Truth is, Adam, we've been keeping tabs on you for a while. My brow furrowed. Me? What for? He shifted slightly, adjusting in his seat. You're local. You've got the background, combat experience, mostly clean record minus a few bar brawls. Let's look at your record. Silver Star, Bronze Star, Meritorious Service, 4 Purple Hearts, Combat Action Ribbon, Navy Achievement, Marine Corps Medal, Good Conduct. You're rough, sure, but that's exactly what we need. I stared at him. So you guys have been watching me? He gave a short nod. We were just waiting for your discharge papers to clear. If you want the position, it's yours. It pays better than the Corps, and you'd report directly to me. That's one hell of an offer, I said, although my head was reeling. There's a catch, though, isn't there? There is, he said quietly, leaning over to grab a tan folder from the console between us. And it's something you need to see for yourself. He passed it to me. I opened it, and the breath left my lungs. My gut twisted. It was a clinical, precise report, cold and detailed, but the contents were shattering. It outlined a 20-year affair between my wife, Lena, and a man named Ethan Maddox, her boss at the school. There was even a DVD slipped inside. "Where did this come from?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. "I'll be straight with you," he said in a calm voice. "As soon as I put your name forward, they ran a deep dive. That includes personal intel. I'm guessing you didn't know?" I shook my head slowly, numb. Not even a hint. "They've been at it for a long time," he said. "Calls, surveillance, meetups, everything's corroborated." And just like that, every strange moment from the past snapped into place. Late nights she blamed on grading, random meetings, ignored calls while I was overseas. All the puzzle pieces suddenly fit. She'd been lying to me for nearly half of our marriage. When I finally managed words, my voice wavered. "And the kids?" Jacob exhaled slowly. "That's the one piece of good news. They're yours." "You're sure?" I asked, fists clenching around the folder. "We ran a DNA cross-check against your military medical files. It's a match." "You already knew she wasn't coming to get me today, didn't you?" I asked, locking eyes with him. He didn't even blink. "Yeah. Today's their usual day. She drives him out here once a week. They hang out at your place, sleep together, then she takes him back. It's been like that all during your deployments." 70 miles round trip, I muttered, shaking my head. "All that just to carry on an affair? What the hell's wrong with her?" Jacob shrugged slightly. "It's more common than you'd think. War changes people. Stress, time apart. It breaks even solid marriages. But that's not the core issue here. The real question is, what do you do now?" "If what's in this folder holds up," I said tightly, "I'm filing for divorce. No second thoughts." "I would too," he said, nodding with gravity. "And him?" I asked, anger starting to rise. "Part of me wants to break the guy in half, but I'm not about to destroy my life for payback. I'll find another way." "You've got everything you need in that envelope," Jacob said. "And for what it's worth, he's married too. 2 kids. His wife doesn't know a thing." "You're absolutely sure all this is real?" I asked, eyes locked on his. "If I had the slightest doubt," he said, meeting my stare without flinching, "I wouldn't have shown it to you. I'm sorry, Adam. You deserved a hell of a lot better. You're one of the few who actually do." "Not many people get what they truly deserve," I muttered, jaw clenched. We took the off-ramp from the highway, the road narrowing as we approached home. Soon, the Jeep rolled up my driveway and came to a stop in front of the old cabin. "Damn," Jacob said, taking in the view. "You really are off the grid out here. Gorgeous place, though." "Yeah," I said, eyes fixed on the porch, once a symbol of the future I thought I had. "My folks built it with their bare hands. I used to picture Lena and me growing old together in this house. Now, it looks like I'll be doing that part alone, at least for the foreseeable future." Jacob leaned over to the console and pulled out a business card. "Here," he said, passing it to me. "Call whenever you're ready. Come by the site, meet the crew, walk around a bit. We've got trained counselors on site, real people you can talk to if things feel heavy. Put the uniform on, bring your history with you, whatever helps you stay centered. I mean it." He gave the envelope between us a quick tap. "But before anything else, you've got to handle that situation." "I will," I said, nodding, the words slow and deliberate. "Thanks, Jacob, for the ride, the opportunity, everything. I'll make sure things are lined up on my end. You'll hear from me." We shook hands, firm, quiet, no extra words needed. After he drove off, I picked up my bags and stood for a moment, watching his taillights fade into the distance. Then I stepped inside. I was still in a daze, trying to piece myself back together. The house looked spotless, just like Lena always kept it. For all her deceit, she was never messy. I carried my stuff to the bedroom, unpacked without a word, and changed into jeans and a t-shirt. I grabbed the folder and went downstairs, switched on the television. My fingers hovered over the disc case for a moment before I slid the DVD into the player and pressed play. A grainy, low-res video filled the screen. Lena and Ethan sitting in what looked like a dingy motel room. "So, when are you getting rid of him?" Ethan asked, sprawled on the bed. "I'm not sure," Lena replied, glancing around, visibly anxious. "Probably once he retires." "If you play your cards right," Ethan said, "you could walk away with half his pension, maybe even clean out the savings and get your hands on the 401k. "That's the plan," she said, flashing a smug little grin. Good thing Dad made that prenup ironclad, I thought, rage clawing its way to the surface. He'd been adamant about locking down the house and the inheritance. A wise call. I hit stop. That was all I needed. My chest felt like it was full of boiling acid. I dug out the phone book, found a local family law firm, and scheduled a consultation for the next morning. Then I went upstairs, grabbed some of Lena's things, clothes, her work laptop, a few random items, and shoved them into bags, dropped them near the front door. If she was leaving, she could do it properly. Later that evening, I sat on the couch, still spinning from the emotional fallout. From my side of things, we weren't perfect, sure, but we were steady. I thought so anyway. If she was going to cheat, I always figured it'd be with someone impressive, someone successful, not a pudgy school principal with a bad taste in neckties. His face flashed in my head, and I let out a bitter laugh. Then another thought surfaced. In all the years that we've been together, Lena has never mentioned any discomfort during intimacy, not a single complaint. Even after the birth of 2 children, she remained calm. Looking back, I feel like I missed the signal that was right in front of me. I got up, went to my office, and opened the utility cabinet. Inside was a still-sealed pack of duct tape, 2 rolls. I stared at it for a beat, then grabbed some zip ties. My hand moved on its own. I walked over to the gun safe, opened it, and took out my .45. I checked the magazine. Empty. The pistol didn't even sit right in my hand. Still, it looked convincing enough. I laid everything out on the dining table, the tape, the zip ties, the pistol. Then, I made myself a sandwich, cracked open a beer, and sat down. Night was setting in. The trees outside were melting into shadows. That's when I heard it. The garage door started rumbling. Laughter trickled in from outside. A door creaked. Then footsteps. The front door eased open. They were still laughing as they entered, until they caught sight of me sitting motionless at the kitchen table, lit by the overhead light. Lena halted mid-stride. "Adam," she said, her voice catching. "What are you doing here?" "I left messages, sent emails. You didn't see any of them?" I tilted my head, voice low and steady. "Oh, I got them. Eventually. Guess my phone died or something." Dripping sarcasm. Obvious and intentional. She looked over at Ethan like she expected him to say something that would smooth it over. He stayed silent. Probably the smartest thing he's ever done. "It's not what it looks like," she blurted, holding her hands up like I might explode. "Please, just listen to me." I stood up slowly. No yelling, no sudden movements. Just a heavy, quiet calm that said everything for me. "Is that so?" I said, eyes locked on Ethan. "So you weren't about to screw this loser in the bed I paid for? That your story?" Ethan tensed like he might speak or step forward. I reached into my waistband, pulled the gun slowly, and aimed it square at his chest. He froze, didn't breathe. His face drained of all color, like someone flipped a switch. I watched a dark patch spread across his crotch. "Oh, God," he croaked, voice trembling. Please don't do this, man." I smiled. "Just a little longer. Shut your damn mouth. You really thought you could sneak around with another man's wife for 2 decades and just walk away clean? Like you deserved a peaceful ending? Like I haven't been watching this whole time?" He didn't move. I pointed. "Out there, by the tree. Hands behind your back. Now." Ethan staggered toward the door, legs like wet paper. Lena didn't move, frozen stiff. I turned to her, voice sharp as a blade. Restrain him. Use the duct tape. I don't want anything showing except his eyes and nose. Go. She blinked like she'd come out of a dream. What? I said go, Lena. She jumped, grabbed the tape, and trailed after Ethan out the door. I followed, eyes never leaving her. She started wrapping him, sloppy, rushed, arms to ankles. The tape screeched with each pull. When she hit the cardboard core, I tossed her a fresh roll. Don't stop. Hurry. Not a single word from her, just circling, wrapping, circling, until he looked like a giant gray larva. Only his terrified eyes and flared nostrils still visible. When she was done, I checked each layer myself. No movement possible. Then I pulled up the number Jacob had pulled from the background check and dialed the Maddox household. A woman answered. This is Jasmine. Mrs. Maddox? I asked evenly. My name's Adam Ramsey. Is your husband Ethan around? No, she said. He's at some school meeting. Staff thing. Can I leave him a message? No need, I said. Sorry for the surprise, ma'am, but your husband's currently in my house with my wife. You might want to come collect him. What? Her voice exploded like a gas leak catching fire. What do you mean he's with your wife? They had plans. But those plans have changed. You better not be screwing with me, she hissed. This some sick joke? Not a joke, ma'am. He's been sleeping with my wife for over 20 years. He's your problem now. Silence. Then she erupted. That son of a bitch. That lying bastard. I'm gonna knock every damn tooth out of his skull. Where are you? East of Athol. Take 95, past the gas station, little dirt road on the right. I'll send you the location. Thanks, Mr. Ramsey, she growled. Don't let him go anywhere. I'm coming. I hung up and glanced at Lena. You wanted a spectacle? I said. You've got front row seats to the whole damn catastrophe. After the call, I sent Jasmine the pin. My hands were steady, movements surgical. I turned to Ethan again. He looked like a corpse that hadn't been told he died. Eyes bulging, sweat pouring. It was almost pitiful. Almost. I tilted my head. Time to have a real talk with the wife. Stay put, sport. Or try to run. Be fun to watch. He made a faint noise behind the layers of tape. Couldn't budge an inch. Good. I nodded to Lena. Inside. Now. She didn't argue. Moved like someone on death row. We stepped in. I slammed the door behind us. The silence cracked like a gunshot. Sit. She dropped onto the couch like her spine had given out. I picked up the remote, turning it over in my hand. I wasn't yelling, wasn't smiling. I was simmering. How long's it been? I asked. And don't lie. I already know more than enough. She stared at her hands in her lap, said nothing. Finally, a whisper. A while. I laughed. Short, bitter. A while? What's that? Since summer. She didn't lift her head, just gave a tiny shake. I stepped closer. A year, 5, a decade. How long, Lena? Since 1995. I didn't move. Just stood there breathing like I'd been gut shot. Let me get this right. While I was off dodging bullets in some desert hellhole, you were home, getting bent over by that limp excuse of a guidance counselor? Her eyes welled up. Tears started flowing. Practiced, like she knew the timing. Cut it out, I snapped. That's not guilt. That's fear. Now answer me straight. You let him into our bed? She nodded, barely. Only when you were deployed, I swear. Never while you were home. Oh, great. So it was just while I was getting shot at across the planet. That makes it okay? I never wanted to hurt you, she murmured. You were hoping I'd stay in the dark, I said, closing the gap between us until she flinched. Not because you cared about my heart, but because you couldn't be bothered to clean up the aftermath. I felt alone, she whispered, barely audible. I tilted my head, flashing a grin sharp enough to draw blood. Is that so? You think I wasn't lonely? Like I didn't have options? I could have strayed too. But I didn't. I honored what we had. And you? You let Ethan Maddox treat you like a damn Pilates session. She reached out. I backed away. Save it. We're done. I'm filing in the morning. Her body stiffened. Please don't. Don't what? I asked, staring straight through her. Ethan said, if you push this through, he can legally claim part of your pension, the house, your retirement fund, everything. I laughed, dry, cracked, like a desert wind. You've lost your mind if you think you're walking away with more than what's already in writing. I pulled out the prenuptial agreement like it was a weapon. This ring any bells? The one she skimmed and signed without a second thought, right there in front of my lawyer. Still solid, still binding. I unfolded it and let it fall into her lap. You get 40% of the savings, that's it. No claim on the house, no spousal support, and definitely no slice of the pension. But the deed's in my name. My parents passed it down to me. It belongs to me. She stared at the document as if it were a ticking time bomb. I'll fight it, she spat. I gave her a calm, cold smile. I figured as much. I pressed a button on the remote. The screen jumped to life, unforgiving and bright. There she was, completely exposed, tangled up with Ethan, both of them sweating and moaning like animals. Her mouth fell open. She slapped her hand over it. How did you get that? Turn it off, please. I crossed my arms. Not a chance. You're gonna sit right there and watch what 20 years of loyalty gets a man. Her hands were trembling. If that gets out, it'll ruin everything. My career, his job, our lives. Choices have consequences, I said. That ring a bell? You're sick, she snapped. No, I said, flat. I'm done being your punchline. I paused the footage, rewound it, then hit play again, just in time for her to look dead into the camera and gasp, he's too big. It hurts. I leaned my head slightly. Was that the truth? You couldn't tell me that? I didn't want to make you feel weird, she muttered. At first it was fine, but then it started hurting. That's why I pulled away. So instead of talking to me, you crawled into another man's bed? She didn't answer, just wiped her face. I strode over to her purse, dumped it onto the table, and sifted through it until I had her keys. Slid the house key off. Took her debit and credit cards, too. Left the STCU one. Yeah, I know about that little nest egg at the credit union. 10% from each paycheck, tucked away like a lifeboat. You'll manage. I tossed the purse back toward her. She just sat there, hollowed out. Guess I should pack then. Not quite yet, I said. You've got some phone calls to make. To who? Your folks. Our kids. You're going to tell them exactly why this marriage is over. Her head shot up, eyes wide with panic. No. Please. Don't drag them into this. They'll never forgive me. I gave her a grim smile. Should have thought about that before you burned everything down. I reached for my phone. That's when headlights cut across the window, bright and sudden. I glanced outside. Well, would you look at that? Jasmine's here. I turned back to Lena. Might want to fix your face. She's about to hear why her husband's been your side project for 20 years. A hard knock shook the door. I opened it. There she was, Jasmine Maddox. Tight jeans, leather jacket like it had been poured over her. Hair perfect, eyes sharp and dangerous. She radiated fury. She looked me over, eyes dipping, lingering like she had all the time in the world. You Adam Ramsey? She asked, voice cold and flat. I am, I said. You must be Jasmine Maddox. For now, she replied. Tone like a blade. Come on in. She stepped through the door like she owned the place, took 2 strides, spotted Lena, and exploded. So you're the whore, Jasmine snarled. So how are those little meetups with my crusty excuse of a husband treating you? Jasmine's words hit like a punch to the throat. Lena flinched. Don't you dare say a word, you filthy husband-stealing witch! Jasmine spat, her eyes blazing. I knew it. I've known all along. Lena. And Maddox. It all lined up too perfectly now. It had to be you, Jasmine growled. You, with that fake little good girl act. quoting Bible verses by day, spreading your legs by night. Jasmine, wait, Lena whimpered, backing away as if she'd stumbled into a trap. No. You don't get to plead now, Jasmine barked, voice sharp as broken glass. You threw away a decent man for that doughy sack of flesh. You really are pathetic. Then her gaze turned to me, sweeping over me with a mix of amusement and disbelief. Her lips twisted into a bitter grin. Seriously? That makes even less sense now. I let out a low chuckle. He's in the backyard, all tied up. Her expression morphed in an instant. A spark lit behind her eyes. Then take me to him. I led her down the hallway, slipped into my office, and came back with a box cutter, a bottle of high-strength isopropyl, and an old rag. She quirked an eyebrow. What's with the slasher movie gear, Dexter? The tape's tight. I'm not about to wrestle with it. Outside, Ethan was still strapped to the tree like a grotesque gift wrap, duct tape binding him from shoulders to boots, eyes sunken with defeat. The moment Jasmine laid eyes on him, she burst into hysterics, clutching her sides. You actually gift-wrapped this sorry bastard? I like clean work, I said with a shrug. You're a damn legend, she laughed, eyes gleaming. She marched up to him, fury boiling just beneath the surface. You useless piece of garbage, she snarled, nose inches from his. Months of nothing, and now I know why. You've been dumping your junk in some cookie-cutter school mom. With a flick, she pulled off her rings and hurled them into the dirt. To hell with you. Rot out here for all I care. I slid the blade out and sliced through the silver cocoon. The tape unraveled, and Ethan slumped to the ground, a mess of sweat and shame. On your feet, I commanded. Crawl if you have to. But you're going inside. He groaned, dragging himself toward the porch, a ruined man in every sense. Jasmine crossed her arms and watched him struggle. That's the most satisfying thing I've seen in years. Lena tried again, her voice laced with fake gentleness. Isn't this enough already? I turned to her, voice like steel. We're just getting started. I tossed her the phone. Call your mother, put it on speaker. She blinked, uncomprehending. What? You heard me. With shaking fingers, she dialed. 2 rings later, a tense voice answered. Lena? What's going on? Are you all right? Lena's voice cracked like a child's. Mom! Adam's throwing me out. What? Why? Because I cheated on him. Silence. Then, you did what? Her mother barked. You foolish little girl. That man did nothing but love you. How could you do this to him? Lena sobbed into the phone, but her mother was far from finished. You've disgraced yourself. I'm beyond disappointed. You'll never find better than him. And honestly, I don't blame him. Sniffling, Lena asked, Can I stay with you? Maybe, her mom answered coolly, but not for long. And no men. Got it? Lena nodded, as if her mother could see her through the phone. Yes, ma'am. Her mother's tone softened just slightly. Is Adam there? I stepped closer. I'm here. Oh, sweetheart, she said gently. Are you holding up? I'll be fine. You didn't deserve this. You've always been too good for her. Keep in touch, okay? I will, I said, and ended the call. Lena wiped at her cheeks, all melodrama and desperation, like a washed-up actress clinging to her final role. You've got 2 more calls to make, I said, my voice flat. Your father and the kids. Start now. Please, Adam, she sobbed. Don't involve them. Leave them out of this. They need to know. You owe them the truth. Now stop wasting time. She sat there, paralyzed, fingers barely holding onto the phone, her whole body shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. Call Caleb, I said, towering over her like judgment itself. She looked up, shattered. Adam, please. Don't make me do this. Just 1 call. Make it matter. Swallowing the lump in her throat, she dialed. Caleb? Mom? Yeah, it's me. You sound weird. Are you okay? Lena's voice broke. No. I'm not joking, Caleb. Your father and I are ending things. Caleb stopped abruptly, mid-stride. What are you even talking about? Did Dad do something? His eyes narrowed, suspicion creeping into his voice. Lena's response came in a faint whisper. No, sweetheart. It wasn't him. It was me. I've been unfaithful. For a long time. He knows. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush. Caleb's voice cracked as he spoke. You're serious? You cheated on Dad? I stepped in then, my words sharp and emotionless. I'm right here, son. And yes, it's true. Your mother's been having an affair for over 20 years. Caleb stared at me, stunned. You just found this out today? I nodded slowly. Yeah. I just learned the truth. Jesus, Dad. I don't even know what to say. I'm so sorry. Lena reached toward him, desperate. Caleb, please. He recoiled. No, don't. Don't try to soften this with pet names. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. He yanked his coat from the hook. I can't do this. I can't even look at you. Then the line went dead. Lena dropped into the nearest chair, her sobs shaking her entire body. One more left, I said, voice devoid of warmth. Rachel. Lena's eyes, red and raw, met mine. Please, don't take her from me too. She was gone the moment you made your choice, I replied coldly. Call her. With trembling fingers, she scrolled to Rachel's contact and tapped the name. It rang. Hey, Mom. What's up? Rachel's voice was cheerful, unaware. Lena struggled to speak. Sweetheart, it's bad. Your father and I, we're getting divorced. There was a pause. What? Why? What happened? Lena closed her eyes, guilt pressing down. It's on me. I've been cheating. For years. Silence stretched on the line, then exploded into rage. You complete idiot. Lena let out a quiet gasp. You cheated on Dad? Rachel's voice was sharp as glass. Are you out of your mind? You had a loyal, good man, and you threw him away. For Ethan? Seriously? I messed up, Lena whispered, voice broken. Don't even, Rachel snapped. Right now, you're not my mother. You're just someone who blew up our family. Lena began to cry again, harsh and uncontrollable. Rachel didn't stop. You'd better get your act together. Because if you think you're seeing my kids anytime soon, think again. Stay away. Don't call. You're done. The call disconnected. Lena collapsed to the floor, hands covering her face, sobs pouring out like floodwater from a shattered dam. I stood over her, arms crossed. Feel that? I asked, my voice icy. This isn't just about an affair. You destroyed 2 families. You burned everything to ash. Between gasps, she said, I told you I was sorry. Everyone hates me. They should, I answered without hesitation. You earned that. You lived a lie for 2 decades. Turning away, I went down the hall and came back with the bags I'd packed earlier. Your things are by the door. You can grab the rest tomorrow. Just let me know first. Lena stood slowly, as if the weight of her choices had broken something deep inside. She made her way toward the door, only to find Jasmine standing there, arms folded, eyes blazing. So let me get this straight, Jasmine growled. You've been screwing my husband behind my back for over 20 damn years? Lena didn't speak. She only nodded, barely. Jasmine gave a bitter laugh. Wow, even more pathetic than I thought. Lena tried to look away, but Jasmine stepped closer. You know what? Maybe I'll even the score. Since you've been warming my bed, maybe I'll go warm yours. Been a while since I had a man who actually knew what he was doing. She turned to me, giving me a slow, deliberate look. What do you think? You in? I gave a half smile. Best offer I've had in years. Why let the cheaters have all the fun? Jasmine smirked. Exactly. Lena's suitcase slipped from her grip. She stared at us, face streaked with tears, barely able to speak. You wouldn't. I don't owe you anything anymore, I said, brushing past her. Now get out." She stood frozen, unable to speak. Jasmine gave a casual flick of her wrist, like she was swatting a fly. "Witch, move along. You don't belong here anymore." Lena didn't respond. She just picked up her belongings and slowly made her way to the door. Jasmine turned sharply toward Ethan, who lingered on the porch looking shrunken with shame. She jabbed a finger at him. "Don't even think about coming in. You can sleep in your car or rot in hell." "I've got an appointment with a lawyer tomorrow, just so you're aware," he muttered. Ethan nodded faintly, eyes fixed on the floorboards. "You hear me?" At the doorway, Lena hesitated, then glanced back over her shoulder. "Adam, I'm sorry. For everything." I didn't say a word. She stepped out, and with that, walked away from both the house and my life. Jasmine and I remained there, side by side, watching the red glow of her taillights recede into the night. A tear slid down my cheek. I wiped it quickly, hoping she hadn't noticed. "You all right?" Jasmine asked softly from across the room. "Yeah, just got something in my eye," I replied. She tilted her head, amused. "Sure, total nonsense." I chuckled without humor, rubbing my temples. "So tell me, how do you even begin to let go of 3 decades with someone?" "You start," she said calmly, "by deciding there's something better ahead." I looked at her closely. "You seriously had no clue?" "Not a bit," she said, eyes narrowing. "I just found out today. I was out of town on a work trip. Meanwhile, she was using that time to sneak around with him." "You never suspected anything?" She paused. "There were signs. His clothes sometimes smelled like her perfume. I noticed, but I never had proof. I just kept hoping he'd wake up." "So where does this leave us?" I asked, searching her face. "You mean, the 2 of us?" she replied, eyebrow raised. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. I'm not the kind of guy for casual things, and I've got zero interest in jumping back into the dating pool." Her lips curled into a slow smile. "So what you're saying is, you like me, and maybe you're wondering what we might become." "Guess I am," I said, scratching at my neck, feeling a little vulnerable. "Well," she said with a playful grin, "I like you too, Adam Ramsey, and if you're willing, I'd like to see where this could go." "I'd like that," I said, letting out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding in. By morning, she was already downstairs in the kitchen when I came down. "Morning, handsome," she said brightly. "Hungry? I made breakfast." "Starving," I said as I entered the room. "Coffee's hot," she added. "What's the plan today?" "First stop is my lawyer's office," I said, reaching for a mug. "Then I've got a meeting about a job offer." "And me?" she asked, drying her hands with a towel. "Soon as we're done eating, I'm heading home. I've got to see a lawyer too," she said, kissing me quickly before walking out. I followed my usual morning routine, shower, shave, and put on my Class C dress uniform. I hadn't worn it since the retirement ceremony, but today felt like it called for something more. When I returned to the kitchen, Jasmine's eyes widened. "Wow, are you in the service or something?" she asked. "Marines," I replied. "For about another month. I'm on terminal leave, almost done." She eyed the rows of ribbons on my chest, intrigued. "What do they all stand for?" she asked, pointing to one. "Different things," I said, touching it lightly. "This one's a Purple Heart with 3 stars. Means I've had a bad habit of being where the action is, multiple times." Her eyes grew. "You've been injured? In combat?" "Yeah," I said with a nod. 4 times. She stared. "Where were you stationed?" "Desert Storm back in the early 90s, I said. "Then 3 tours in Iraq, another 3 in Afghanistan." "Jesus," she whispered. "How long were you in?" "Little over 30 years, I told her. "Some of that in the reserves, but mostly active duty." Her face shifted, tight with fury. "So while you were out there, dodging bullets and explosions, my husband and your wife were having a cozy little affair?" "Yes," I said flatly. She shook her head in disgust. Unbelievable. He's going to pay. We finished breakfast quietly, no more words, just a shared understanding. Before she left, she asked me to call and let her know she got home safe. I promised I would. Later that morning, I sat across from my attorney and laid everything out. Every betrayal, every shred of evidence, every financial detail and clause in the prenup. He listened closely, then leaned back in his chair and said simply, "All right. Taking into account the prenuptial agreement and her current income, the odds are heavily in our favor. She brings in roughly $68,000 a year, which all but eliminates the likelihood of any alimony claim succeeding." He gestured back to the prenup. That paper locked down my pension and guaranteed the house would remain mine. It was a smart move, no question. The only remaining asset we'd need to split was the joint bank account, and even that had clear limitations. The agreement capped her portion at 40%. "When do you want to initiate the process?" he asked. "Yesterday," I answered without pause. He gave a brief nod. "We'll have to process it through Washington, which is routine," he explained. "Assuming no hiccups, we can close this out by next week." He handed over a checklist. "Follow these steps to protect yourself. Let's just hope she hasn't made a withdrawal yet." I skimmed the paper. "I'll hit the bank on my way home," I told him. "The rest I can handle online." He rose from his seat. "Any questions for now?" "None that I can think of," I said, shaking his hand. He passed me his business card. "Call if anything comes up. Best of luck, Adam." I covered the filing fees, left the retainer, and walked out to the parking lot. Once I was in my car, I phoned Jacob. "Just left the attorney's office," I said. "Need to take care of the bank. Then we should talk about that job you mentioned." "I'm ready when you are, Adam," he replied. A few minutes later, directions to the camp appeared on my phone. I finally let out a breath when I got to the bank. The account was untouched. Lena hadn't withdrawn a cent. I transferred 60% into a new personal account, canceled our shared credit cards, paid off what we owed, and requested replacements in my name only. Walking out, I felt a weight start to lift. I got in my truck and headed northeast, roughly 35 miles, to take a look at the camp Jacob told me about. The drive was a stretch, but the skies were clear and the weather held steady. Honestly, the solitude was welcome. I needed the headspace. Just a day earlier, I'd been picturing retirement, settling into a peaceful life with someone I believed had my back. Now I was left sifting through 2 decades of lies, betrayal, and 1,000 unanswered questions. 6 of those years were spent overseas, ducking fire, losing brothers, giving nearly everything for a mission I thought mattered. The strangest part? I wasn't mad. I felt calm, calculated, even. Like muscle memory had kicked in from all those years under pressure. Emotions shelved, focus narrowed, just waiting for the next move. Thank God for Jasmine. I don't think I could have managed this alone. She brought something with her: clarity, comfort, and sure, the physical connection helped. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if I was rushing into something too fast. Only time would tell. I left the highway, turning onto a narrow, winding road that led toward Camp Rollins. With no traffic in sight, I let the engine stretch out a bit. The trees closed in on both sides, thick and green, forming a tunnel around the road. Eventually, I reached a checkpoint, a guard post next to a steel gate. A soldier in full camo, rifle slung across his chest, stepped up to my window. "I'm here to see Jacob Steele," I said. "Adam Ramsey." I handed him my license and Jacob's card. "One moment," he said, taking both items. He did a quick walk around of the truck, then disappeared into the small shack and picked up an old field phone. A short call later, he came back, returned my documents, and gave a sharp nod. "Commandant Steele is expecting you. Welcome to Camp Rollins, Adam Ramsey." I started to thank him, but he was already flipping the gate control. I gave a quick wave as I passed. He replied with a subtle nod. Driving further in, it felt less like a casual camp and more like a legitimate military base. Wooden barracks stood in perfect rows, and the central training ground was alive with movement. Teams drilling, formations tight. Everything was squared away, grass trimmed, gravel neat, not a detail out of place. Discipline was everywhere. I parked in front of a larger wooden building marked HQ. Inside, a blonde woman in business attire looked up from behind a polished desk. "You must be Sergeant Ramsey," she said, rising to greet me. "Yes, ma'am," I replied politely. "Welcome to Camp Rollins," she said warmly. "Commandant Steele is waiting for you." "Any chance there's some black coffee?" I asked. "Of course," she said, motioning down the hall. "Right this way." I knocked lightly on Jacob's door. He was finishing up a phone call but waved me in. He wore a khaki shirt, the silver oak leaves still pinned to his collar, clearly holding on to his old rank. He ended the call, got up, and extended a hand. "Glad you made it, Adam," he said, motioning toward a chair. Just then, the receptionist brought in a cup of coffee. I gave her a nod of thanks, took a sip, hot and bold, just the way I like it. "Everything go smoothly on the way in?" Jacob asked. "No problems," I said. Directions were spot on. "Good," he replied. "Before we get into the job itself, let me walk you through the setup here. Everyone who steps through those gates has already been through hell. They've been lied to, manipulated, worn down to almost nothing. Sure, some caught a few punches, but the real harm? It hit deeper. It carved them out from the inside, tossed aside like they were disposable. Honestly, a lot of them? They're hanging by a thread." Jacob paused, locking eyes with me. "I get it. Fragile isn't a popular word these days," he said evenly. "But that's what they are. These men show up broken, mentally, physically, emotionally, barely functioning. And the women they were with, they saw the damage and made it worse." "Jesus," I muttered, taken aback by his bluntness. "So how do you fix something like that?" I asked. "Step 1, Jacob said. "We pull the plug. No electronics. Zero. Phones, laptops, tablets, all confiscated. 90 days without a screen. No Instagram, no Netflix, not even email." I chuckled under my breath. "Bet that goes over like a lead balloon." He smiled. "It's rough, like amputating a limb. But once they push through that first shock, most of them admit they feel lighter, like they've finally opened their eyes after being asleep for years." He leaned in slightly. "Some of them were glued to their screens 12 hours a day. Mindless scrolling. They'd forgotten what real quiet sounded like. We shut off the noise, and for the first time, they're forced to look at their own mess." "What about keeping in touch with family?" I asked. "Old school," Jacob replied. "Letters only. We've got mailboxes set up in Bonner's Ferry and Clark Fork. Deliveries come in twice a week. That's a haul just to send a letter." "Exactly," he said. "It creates distance from the madness. No surprise visits, no angry exes showing up. We've got guards, drones, and a wired fence around the property. Anyone tries to get in, we'll know before they're close." "Has anyone ever tried?" "Now and then," he said without blinking. "And let's just say, we handle those." He added that I'd find the full breakdown in a packet I'd be taking home. Handled, I thought. Interesting choice of words. "What's the training program like?" I asked, leaning in. "Short version," he said, glancing at his watch. "It's all in the packet, but here's the overview. Month 1 is pure grind. No tech, no escape. We push them hard. Think military-style intensity. Up at 5 sharp, no downtime. Everything's at a run. And the staff, all business. What changes in month 2? That's when we dig into the deeper stuff," he said. "Individual therapy, group work, it gets heavy. But we keep them physically active too. They start learning self-defense basics. The pace doesn't slow." He checked the time again. "There's a session happening now. Want to see it?" "Absolutely," I said, getting to my feet. We exited the office and moved into a neighboring building. Jacob opened a door and motioned me inside. A group of men sat in a semicircle, facing a woman standing at the front, clearly a counselor. Near the door, an instructor straightened as Jacob entered, nodded in greeting, then returned to his seat. We slid quietly into chairs at the back. One man, early 30s maybe, was speaking, tears slipping down his face. His voice trembled as he recalled how his wife had humiliated him, forcing him to serve her lovers while she laughed at his pain, ridiculed him, told him he was worthless. He couldn't finish. He just broke. The men on either side of him didn't flinch. One rested a steady hand on his shoulder. Another gave a firm, silent nod. No talking. Just presence. Just strength. I glanced at the instructor. Built like a wall, square-jawed, rank stripes on his sleeves. His fists were clenched on his knees, knuckles white, jaw locked. But he said nothing. Just stared ahead with steely focus. Something stirred in me. If I could do anything to support this, help these guys recover, I was all in. No second thoughts. After the session, Jacob took me around the rest of the camp. Eventually, we reached the staff barracks. Inside were several men wearing khaki shirts like Jacob's. Some had stripes, others wore staff pins. Jacob clapped once. "All right, listen up. This is Adam Ramsey." They gave polite nods. A few stepped forward to shake my hand. As we talked, I found out most were ex-Marines or Army NCOs. They were a tight crew, mission-focused, no fluff. One of them asked, "You thinking about coming on board?" I glanced at Jacob. "Yeah, I'm in." A grin broke across Jacob's face. "He'll be our next senior instructor. He's on terminal leave now, so give it a few weeks. In the meantime, he'll be getting settled in." The others nodded in approval. "Welcome to the team, Adam," one of them greeted, gripping my hand firmly. "Appreciate it," I replied, matching his handshake before moving through a round of further introductions. Back in his office, Jacob studied me intently. "So you're committing?" I gave a single nod. "Yeah, I'm in." He grinned slightly and extended his hand. "Glad to hear it. What changed your mind?" "It was that guy from Group," I said. "The stuff he described, it sounded like something out of a myth. I didn't think that kind of thing actually happened." Jacob exhaled slowly, like he'd heard it all before. "It happens more often than people are willing to admit." He reached for a folder on his desk. "Time to make it official," he said, handing it over. I flipped through it. The salary? Unreal. It was leagues beyond anything I'd seen in the Corps. The benefits, too. "I'm in, no second thoughts." "Glad to hear it," he said, passing me a hefty stack of folders. "Start with this." I chuckled. "Witch burning? That some kind of joke?" "You'll find out," he said. "It's a graduation thing, all part of the journey." I made my farewells, gathered the materials, and walked out. The next 3 weeks were a blur. Lena got the divorce papers, signed them without protest. Not a word of argument. My lawyer said it'd be finalized in 30 days. Jasmine filed her own paperwork, but since she was in Washington, hers would take around 3 months. Lena never contacted me again. I preferred it that way. Her parents came to collect her things. I handed over a check with her share of the account, plus a box of memories, photos, mementos, the whole lot. I told them I didn't want anything of hers left behind. Her mother told me Lena couldn't even bear to see me. "Can't say I blame her," I replied. Jasmine got it. Jasmine had spent the past 3 weekends at my place. We'd gone fishing at Pandora. She took to it instantly. Lena had always despised fishing, but Jasmine? She not only landed kokanee, she cleaned and cooked them better than I ever could. Meanwhile, I started going to the camp regularly, twice a week or so. I met the instructors, hardened vets, many divorced, some trying to rebuild their lives. I sat in on more sessions. The stories hit me hard. Men broken down, used up, discarded. It only solidified my decision. That's when I found out why the facility had such tight security. One of the students had escaped a group called Mace. When he refused to go back, they came looking, armed. Security and some federal agency I'd never heard of stepped in. Since then, if a student so much as mentions MMAS or anything like it, that agency gets involved immediately. Later that month, Jacob invited me to attend the final ritual, the witch burning. I threw on my Class C uniform and drove out after sunset. Students stood in a wide ring, circling a massive straw effigy. Each of them came forward and pinned photos to it. Ex-wives, abusers, manipulators, anyone who'd betrayed their trust. Once the effigy was fully adorned, it was hoisted onto a pole over a pile of firewood. An instructor handed a lit torch to one of the students. "Go ahead." Aye, sir." He set the wood ablaze. The fire climbed quickly. The figure was engulfed within seconds. They began chanting, "Burn, burn, burn." Some shouted, some cried, others stood in silence, absorbing the moment. As the effigy collapsed in flames, a few of them started dancing around the pyre. One man urinated on the ashes. The chants grew louder. Fists punched the air. Boots hit the ground. I leaned toward Jacob. "What's really going on here?" He crossed his arms. "It's about release, letting go without hurting anyone. They graduate tomorrow. 3 months ago, these guys were broken. And now? They'll walk out whole," he said. I gave a slow nod, then let my thoughts drift. For a second, I pictured Lena's face on that burning figure. A smile crept across my face, and I didn't fight it. "How are things going for you?" Jacob asked. "Good," I said. "Divorce is finalized in a few days." "You holding up all right?" "Better than I thought I would." "That's good to hear. Your terminal leave's just about done, right?" "3 more days," I said. "Perfect timing," Jacob replied. "New class starts the day after. You'll meet them." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Here." I opened it. Inside sat a pair of polished metal chevrons. "Sergeant Major?" I asked. He nodded. "Senior instructor. You've earned it. Congratulations." "Thank you," I said, and I meant every word. "No," he said, smiling. "Thank you." I spent the following 4 days at Jasmine's place. Ethan had offered to buy out her share of the house. She didn't waver. Word had spread. Lena was on her way out. Jasmine, clearly relieved, didn't try to hide her sense of release. "Move in with me," I offered. She agreed without pause. "That sounds good," she said. I hired a moving trailer, packed up the few belongings she actually cared about, and brought it all back to my place. The space was tight, barely enough for one, let alone 2, but we'd find a way to make it work. That morning, she stood by as I suited up for my first full day on duty at the camp. She let out a whistle. "Looking sharp," Jasmine said, handing me a wrapped breakfast sandwich and a steaming thermos before leaning in to kiss me. "Stick with your squad," she teased, flashing a smile. "I will," I told her. I didn't know where the road ahead would lead, but I was ready to see it through. Lena's absence left a noticeable gap, and Jasmine filled it without hesitation. For the first time in what felt like ages, I was grounded again, like I'd returned to myself. When I got to Camp Rollins, I walked through the main gate, caught my reflection in the glass, squared my shoulders, straightened my collar, and stepped outside. Then I froze. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. Spread out across the lot was a group of fresh recruits, scruffy, uncoordinated, barely looking fit to serve. I took a breath and exhaled slowly. "This is what I've got to work with?" I shouted. "You want me to shape this mess into a functional unit? Half of them can't even pass for regular civilians." I ran a hand through my hair. "Get them processed now before I lose my mind." "On it, Sergeant," a nearby staff member shouted, immediately snapping into gear and directing the recruits toward the intake tents. As they trudged away, I spotted Jacob across the yard. He stood watching, arms crossed, an amused grin spreading across his face. "Solid entrance," Jacob called out. "Welcome to Camp Rollins." That wraps up our first chapter, but stay with us. There's another unforgettable journey just around the corner. Let's get started. At 29, James Sanders stepped into the bar simply hoping to decompress after an exhausting day. Several tables sat empty, and he selected one near the door. A glance at his watch told him it was 5:30 p.m. or so. He figured he'd have a couple of drinks, then head back to his hotel to clean up before grabbing dinner at the Chinese restaurant across the street. Once back in his hotel room, he planned to call his wife, Nancy, just as he had every night for the last 3. He didn't like to admit how much he missed her, and being away in Buffalo for work never seemed to get easier. They'd met shortly after college, quickly fallen in love, and married 3 years ago. Nancy worked in finance, managing client portfolios for a major insurance and investment company based in Buffalo. Their jobs afforded them a comfortable lifestyle. They owned a stylish house in one of the city's most sought-after neighborhoods. Nancy handled the household finances with sharp efficiency, and their savings continued to grow. Recently, she'd begun nudging him to consider starting a family. He kept telling her he needed to finish up some key projects first. Then they could begin trying in a few months. At the moment, his job as a computer engineer had him stationed in Albany, overseeing tests on a custom software system he'd designed for a client's warehouse. Almost done, he thought with relief, glad that tomorrow he'd be heading home. Once I get back, she's not going to let me out of her sight. The thought made him smile. If we're going to have a kid, I'll need to cut down on the travel and hand off more responsibility. His musings were cut short when a man approached his table. The newcomer looked to be in his early 60s, sturdy and broad-shouldered, with closely cropped gray hair. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, though he didn't wait for permission. He dropped into the seat across from James just as the waitress arrived. "2 rum and cokes, lemon wedges on the side," the man said smoothly, like he'd done it 1,000 times. James blinked. He was about to order that exact drink. "My bad," the man added, turning toward him. "Name's Alexander, but friends call me Al," he said, offering a handshake. "Some even say Al the Great, but I hate that nickname." James shook his hand, still caught off guard. "What brings you over, Mr. Alexander?" "Please, just Al, like your dad used to call me." James sat up straighter. "You knew my father?" "Henry Sanders and I served together in the military," Al said. James's voice softened. "He died when I was just 5. "I know," Al said with quiet sympathy, a hint of sorrow in his smile. "It happened during an ambush overseas." "I barely remember him," James admitted, "but Mom kept photos around so I'd always know his face." Their drinks arrived, and Al raised his glass once the waitress walked away. "To Henry. He was a big fan of rum and coke, too." "You're kidding," James said. "Nope. Always kept a bottle hidden somewhere. Still don't know how the officers never caught on." "I've always heard he died a hero," James said quietly. "He was much more than that," Al replied, his eyes misting over. "It was late. We were returning to base after patrol when we got hit. He saved us, gave his life doing it." Al paused and wiped at his eyes. "In fact," he went on, voice thick with emotion, "he died right there in my arms. Just before he went, he made me promise I'd look after his family." He finished his drink in one swallow and waved for another round. 3 months later, I got hit too. A bullet missed my heart by inches." James stared at him. "That's intense." "Yeah, I got lucky," Al said simply. The waitress came back with fresh drinks for both. "I was flown to Israel for emergency surgery. After recovery, I was discharged and returned home to Alabama. As soon as I could, I started searching for your mom and you. I found out she'd moved in with her parents up in Maine." "I remember Bangor," Al continued. "Met your grandparents. Lovely people. They said your mother had remarried, a British businessman who took her and you to live in London." He took a sip from his drink. "I was glad she'd found some peace. My stepfather passed away in a car accident. That's when we came back to the States," James said. "I know," Al nodded. "You were 18 then, just finished high school." James looked directly at him, something unspoken building inside. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." Al scanned their surroundings, then motioned toward the exit. "Let's take a walk. Easier to talk somewhere quiet." They downed their drinks, and Al tossed some cash on the table as they headed out. Only a block away, Washington Park welcomed them with shaded paths and stone benches. They chose a spot near the Moses Memorial Fountain, the sound of trickling water filling the silence. "When I got back from Bangor," Al said, staring ahead, "I started looking for work. Then one day, 2 men showed up at my place." "Government guys?" James asked. "Something like that. They looked like they came straight out of a spy movie, said they worked for a new federal agency. They were recruiting veterans, guys with specialized experience." "What kind of experience?" James pressed. "They needed a team that could handle missions no one else would touch," Al said, his tone turning more serious. "The kind of jobs that came with high risk, moral ambiguity, and no guarantees." "You mean the dirty work," James said, understanding the gravity behind his words. James squinted slightly, his gaze sharp. "Exactly. But I'm afraid I can't give you any more details. My missions have taken me across continents. Still, whenever I returned to England or was anywhere near Europe, I made sure to quietly check in on you and your mother." "You mean that promise you made to my dad?" James asked. "Yes, I do," Al replied. "When I learned your stepfather was getting involved with his young assistant—" "Wait, are you saying he cheated on Mom?" James interrupted, visibly stunned. "That's right," Al confirmed. "She had no idea. He was even gearing up to file for divorce and leave you both without a dime." James lowered his eyes, slowly shaking his head in disbelief. "I always thought he really loved her," he murmured. "That was when I had to intervene," Al said, his voice steady. "The very day he planned to meet with his lawyer and begin divorce proceedings, I made sure he never arrived." James went rigid. "You don't mean that car crash? It wasn't an accident?" "I told you once before," Al said with a sigh. "We take care of the messy work. But your mother did something admirable after that. She sold everything, liquidated the business, and returned here with the proceeds." "This is all a lot to process," James said quietly. "I understand," Al said gently. "You had just started university after coming back. Then your mother met someone through a formal introduction. A widower. His wife died of cancer, no children." "You investigated him too, didn't you?" James asked. "Absolutely. He's a decent man, truly devoted to your mother." "I'm glad she found someone like that," James said with a nod. Al's mouth curved into a faint smile. "Tell me, did you ever try to find out who sent you those photos of Sandra with your so-called friends?" James's eyes grew wide. "That was you?" He buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed. "All this time I figured it was some classmate who didn't want to be involved." "You handled it like a man," Al said with approval. "You threw her out, didn't fall for the crying, and cut off the other 2 completely. You never even went back after the break, just stayed home with your mother." "I couldn't bring myself to see their faces again," James admitted. "Do you know what became of them?" Al asked. "I heard bits and pieces," James said. "A gang beat them up badly, and Sandra dropped out." Al locked eyes with him. "You really think that wasn't me?" James stared at him, shocked, speechless. "You were away at the time. Perfect cover. No one would link you. After they stumbled out of a pub one night, a friend and I paid them a visit. Justice was served. One ended up sterile, the others in a wheelchair permanently. The official report blamed some random gang," James whispered. "As for Sandra," Al continued, "I knew what kind of thrills she was chasing, so I made sure she got a taste of that world. Not long after, she tested positive for several STDs." James raised his eyebrows, stunned. "I made sure word spread across campus. The shame drove her out. She fled to California, and last I checked, she's still in therapy." James exhaled deeply. "That's insane. No one lays a finger on Henry Sanders's family," Al said fiercely. James leaned in. But why now, Al? Why show up between missions just to lay all this out? I've been watching over you, Al replied simply. Al, come on. I've got nothing to hide. I live honestly. I don't lie, don't cheat. I work hard. I know you do. I don't pay people off. I treat everyone fairly. I don't care about skin color or where someone's from. I've never said a racist thing in my life. I'm proud of the life I've built. Al gave a small, approving nod. Your father would be proud too. James offered a small smile. After college, I met Nancy at a party. We got married 3 years back. She's in finance. No kids yet. She's ready, but I've been waiting to finish a few big projects. I know, Al said, his tone warm. I was at your wedding, you know. James looked surprised. Seriously? You were there? Last row. Stayed out of sight. A spark of realization lit up James's face. You left that anonymous envelope, didn't you? Al nodded once. Wasn't hard to slip it into your jacket. I've wondered for years who gave me that kind of money, James said, still amazed. Thank you. No thanks needed. You earned it, Al said. His tone then shifted. Now tell me, what do you know about Thomas Smith? James tilted his head. Just that he's Nancy's boss. Started around 6 months ago. Al's face darkened. He used to work at the company's headquarters, had a wife, a kid, but he was also having an affair with his secretary. Upon uncovering the infidelity, the husband didn't hesitate. He immediately filed for divorce, forwarded damning video footage to Thomas's wife, and pursued a civil lawsuit against the firm for alienation of affection. The matter never saw a trial. Attorneys on both sides arranged a private agreement, and the husband walked away with a hefty compensation. Thomas's wife dissolved their marriage, gained full custody of their child, and stripped him of nearly everything he owned. How's he still employed after all that? James asked, incredulous. He's the chairman's nephew, Al replied with a shrug. Basically untouchable. They even made up a position at the Buffalo branch just to relocate him quietly. Is he dangerous? James questioned again. Without a doubt, Al said. He's been secretly seeing your wife for the past 4 months. What? James gasped. No way. Nancy wouldn't do something like that. She's not capable of that kind of betrayal, he added, voice cracking and eyes brimming. I've been gathering intel for 8 weeks now, Al said with a measured tone. You knew for 2 months and didn't tell me? James interrupted, furious and wounded. Breathe, Al responded calmly. In this line of work, timing is everything. I needed you out of town before we kicked off Operation Cheaters. You actually named it? James snapped back. Just hear me out, Al continued. They met in cheap motels and on several nights used your own bedroom while you worked late. We rigged the house with cameras and microphones, but only active when you were gone. From everything we captured, she wasn't coerced. She was a willing participant. Al unlocked his Android, tapped a file, and handed it over. This is from last night. Try not to crush the phone. James stared at the screen. His bedroom filled the frame. Nancy, still in her wedding gown, was on all fours while Thomas moved behind her. Whose body is this? Thomas asked on the recording. It's yours, Tom, Nancy answered. When's that spineless husband of yours going to agree to having a baby? Soon, she replied. I'm working on it. It'll be my child in your belly, Thomas said with pride. Yes, she responded softly. It will be yours. I'll make sure of it. Every child you have from now on will be mine. Understand me? Yes, my love, she whispered back. James couldn't bear to continue. He passed the phone back to Al, hands trembling, his face twisted in grief. Al switched off the device and slipped it into his coat. Tears won't solve this, he said coldly. James wiped his eyes. So what now? You've got enough evidence to file for divorce on grounds of adultery, Al said. Didn't you once tell me you were close with your dad? Yeah, I did. What do you think he would have done if this had happened to him? I want to know, James said, his voice low. He would have chopped them up and tossed the pieces in the river, Al said, deadpan. James lowered his gaze to the floor. How far does your work really go? As deep as you need it to, Al said evenly. What are you thinking? I want them to beg in front of me before they die, James said, his voice ice. A grin spread across Al's face. Knew you had the fire in you, he said triumphantly. My guys had a bet going about how you'd react. We're already set. James blinked. Set for what? Come with me. Bring your car. I'll fill you in en route. James followed Al out past city limits to a derelict building surrounded by weeds and silence. Let's go inside, Al instructed, and keep quiet. They moved down into a basement thick with moisture and shadows. Al gestured for silence, then pushed open a steel door. Inside, under dim lighting, Nancy and Thomas sat naked on the floor, tied tightly, blindfolded, and gagged. A large man stood against the far wall, watching. He nodded solemnly at James. Al pulled him back out and softly shut the door. We took them late last night, he whispered. I packed a bag for Nancy, grabbed her ID and passport. My guy did the same with Thomas, collected everything, even his vehicle. What happened to the car? James asked. It's already at a shop, getting dismantled. No trail, no noise. Al placed a firm hand on James's arm. Now comes the real decision. Do we follow through or let them go? We've got all the tools. We can disappear them, or just dump them miles away and let them explain their situation to the world. I meant what I said, James replied. His eyes scanned the room and settled on a broken wooden chair lying nearby. He lifted it, carried it into the room, and sat squarely across from the two captives. Al nodded to the man in the corner. The guard removed their blindfolds, then slipped out without a word. Nancy and Thomas locked eyes with James, and panic set in instantly. Never underestimate the quiet ones, James hissed. Their eyes were heavy with an unspoken despair, pleading for mercy they couldn't voice. You had once dreamed of raising a child with the person you loved. James stared at the trembling Nancy, his voice cold and clipped. You could have walked away, married him. That's all it would have taken. But instead, you let a spineless man raise the child born from your betrayal. Now, he roared, there would be a price. He turned toward Thomas with a look of venom. You took what was mine, so I'm taking something from you. Your life. Thomas trembled in place. James slowly lowered himself into the chair across from them. You'll endure every ounce of pain I can give, he declared. I want your agony. I want your shame. I want you to wake every moment wishing you'd never defied me. I want the both of you drowning in self-loathing, he went on, his voice tightening. And more than anything, I want my face burned into your final memory. At that moment, another man entered the room, hauling a bulky wooden crate. He placed it squarely between James and the terrified couple. James smiled darkly. Strike first, or die trying, he said, flipping open the lid. Nancy glimpsed the contents and collapsed in horror. Thomas pulled against his bonds in vain. We'll start with you, lover boy. 2 hours ticked by. Outside, James was leaning against his car when Al joined him. Follow the script, Al reminded him. Call everyone you need to. Before midnight, inform the police. They'll tell you to wait the standard 24 hours. You know the lines, don't stray, and you'll be fine. Your alibi's airtight. To them, it'll look like they ran off together, Al added. We'll handle the leftovers, whatever's left of them, 3 states away after we clean the place top to bottom. James nodded. I'll stick to my role. Good man, Al said. So, when will our paths cross again? James asked. When things cool down, I'll swing by with a bottle of rum, Al laughed. The two shared a short laugh. Go grab a meal. Tip big, Al added. Make sure the waitress remembers your face. James slid behind the wheel and vanished into the darkness. A full year had passed since James had last laid eyes on Nancy and her lover. He had followed Al's instructions to the letter. That same night, after returning home, he began calling around, asking if anyone had seen Nancy. Then he filed a missing persons report. Under the weight of fear, Nancy had given up her credit card PIN and her email password. She'd also admitted that several of her co-workers and higher-ups knew about her affair. Al arranged for one of his female operatives to use Nancy's credit card across a trail of states, ending in Dallas, creating a believable path. Once in Dallas, the woman accessed Nancy's email from a mall's public Wi-Fi. She sent James a message, supposedly from Nancy herself, in which she confessed her love for Thomas Smith. She said their relationship had lasted 4 months and that many people at work were aware. She claimed they'd decided to disappear and start fresh, and begged James not to come looking. In the months that followed, police interviewed James multiple times. He stuck rigidly to the rehearsed story. His alibi never wavered, and with no solid evidence, the case stalled. 6 months after Nancy's disappearance, a detective showed up at James's door. "We've tracked your wife's route," the detective said. "She made stops at locations without surveillance, small gas stations, backroad shops. Any clue why?" "I don't know that route," James replied coolly. "Can't say." "One more thing," the detective added. "We went through your financial records. Why would she abandon all the joint accounts? There were only minor charges leading to Dallas." "Ask the adulteress," James snapped. The detective, slightly embarrassed, apologized and left. That was the last time the police ever contacted him. Still married in the eyes of the law, James liquidated their shared investments and reinvested everything in accounts solely under his name. He opened new accounts, moving all the funds. At the same time, he launched a lawsuit against the company where Nancy and Thomas had worked. His lawyer warned the case was weak. There was no real evidence beyond the forged email. James countered by threatening to expose Thomas's questionable behavior at the corporate headquarters. The firm chose discretion. They quietly offered a $2 million settlement to bury the issue. Once the legal matters were resolved, James filed for abandonment. In 3 short months, his freedom would be official. He had started dating again, sampling new relationships. Deep down, he believed he would one day meet someone who truly belonged to him. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.